Yeah, so you've definitely heard the phrase "save that shit for nationals," right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
It
yep.
doesn't work. It works in a game where you can't play people and the average skill level isn't like high enough where you reasonably think other people could have figured that out. If you like found some crazy tech that you think is going to win you a tournament, the chance of that happening now is so low because we have Twitter, we have YouTube, people share information so fast in Discords and online. The chance of you coming up with something that's completely unique and completely new and no one else is going to come up with it before Evo and you're just going to hide it and not use it in any matches with anyone or find out any of the problems with it. Like you might think you came up with the coolest thing ever and then you play in an actual match and someone's instinct actually accidentally beats it. And you won't
Yeah.
know that if you don't try it on people, you know?
Hello, and welcome to the Absolute Guard podcast.
Yep, this is episode 25, a fitting number considering Christmas is around the corner. We didn't plan that, it just happened to work out that way. My name is Benny, and as always, I'm joined by my co host Jon, who gained some notoriety this weekend because he is an alpha amongst the beta players. How you doing today, Jon?
Pretty good, pretty good. I did have a good time with the Street Fighter 6 beta. Um,
Nice,
I
nice.
yeah, lots of Chun-Li action. How was your weekend?
It was good. It was good. World Cup final was ridiculous.
Oh
Probably the
man,
best one ever. Like, yeah, that was. I actually had Saturday night off. Went out with my wife and some friends and stayed out way later than I expected till like 2 a.m. And then I was like, I gotta wake up for the World Cup final. I gotta wake up in like 5 hours. And I was
yeah,
like, well, I still woke up anyway because like I wasn't gonna miss it, and I'm glad I didn't. So
yeah.
yeah,
I
man,
my fiance was woke up at 8 a.m. to watch it, and then we had plans to like go do stuff at halftime, and then she's like, "No, we need to sit and watch this." Like, and I kept like I actually didn't even wake up for the beginning of the World Cup. She just like was slamming on tables and clapping, really letting yelling and stuff during all the penalty kicks,
yeah,
if I recall correctly, and that woke my ass up.
yeah. Nice, nice. Yeah, so for those that don't know, the notoriety that I was talking about with John was just in terms of who was it? Did you play Vesper Arcade?
I yeah
Uh,
yeah, I played Vesper Arcade and I ended up on a YouTube video.
yeah, so yeah, basically you watched him, and then I thought it was kind of funny the fact that like what better way to monetize this content than to like put it up on YouTube, right?
Yeah, I to his credit, he had a really good attitude. While like I watched the video itself and watched some of his reactions, and like there's a point where like when you're playing a new game and it's really fun, and like it to get washed is really fun because you get to see um what the possibilities of the game are, and I got to feel that later on when I entered some tournaments that we over the weekend, and I got beat up by Christitarian and Graham Wolf. They fucked me up. So it was inspiring. It's like, man, this is what this game is capable of. It's a really good feeling, I think.
Nice, nice. Speaking of inspiring, who do we have on our show today?
So today on the show we have Rath, who is somebody I tried to think of like an intro sentence for him, and then I'm like, he's got so many different hats that he's worn throughout the community, like in our local scene as well as nationally. He's got a YouTube channel that's incredibly popular. He's a top player in the anime scene, and also like he played Street Fighter V with me briefly, and like he was placing extremely high there too. And so he's just great ass fighting game player too. And then he's also a tournament organizer in our scene, and ran a lot of the tournaments that he's won. So
Yeah,
he's like kind of a jack of all trades and master of everything, so to speak.
yeah.
I'm gonna go ahead
Nice,
and break. Oh
nice.
yeah, and then yeah, what do you think of Wrath?
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. Like I remember when he started playing Street Fighter. I mean, I don't know if that was his first Street Fighter game, but like, I know he was a strong player in other scenes, and for me it's always like a thing of pride. Like, this is my game. And then for him to come in and like, body me or like, give me trouble, I'm just like, oh man, like, okay, this is gonna be some, I'm gonna need to do some work.
Totally, yeah. The young guy puts you on notice, huh?
Yeah,
Alrighty,
exactly.
Let's bring him on. How's it going,
Hey, how's
Rath?
it going? It's great to be here. Thank you.
Good to see you,
Nice,
man.
nice, man. Glad you could make the time. Yeah, we were trying to fill out the rest of our schedule, and like you were actually one of the people at the very beginning that I was kind of looking to talk to. So glad you were able to find some time.
Yeah, anytime for you guys.
Cheers. So to get started, we usually ask people what is the origin of your fighting game tag, Rath?
Oh, okay. So, um, I a long time ago I played Monster Hunter on the PSP, Freedom 1 on the PSP. And there's a monster in there called a Rathalos. My
Yeah.
brother and I,
Oh,
yeah, my brother and I, we had a RuneScape account. We were pretty poor at the time. We were little kids, and not little kids. We were like, I was like 11, and we had to share a RuneScape account, which by the way is against the rules. We got a strike in our account because we admitted at one point that like our parents couldn't afford two accounts, which is whack.
oh
But
wow.
we had a RuneScape account forever ago where it was Rathalos, Rathalos, and then some number afterwards because Rathalos was taken because millions of people played that game at the time.
Sure.
And down the road, I played Call of Duty like everyone else did in high school, and I really wanted to like quick scope with other people that quick scope because it was just really fun to just run around like Rust and Modern Warfare 2 and shoot everybody with that. And I just wanted to just do that, and I found like a clan that only did that, and it was just fun to like hang out with them and play. But they wanted everyone in the clan to have the same like prefix on their tag, so it was legendary. Was it?
Okay,
So it
that's
was
where
like
it comes from.
legendary, and then I couldn't fit Rathalos afterwards, so it was legendary Wrath. And I like that way more because it's like less, I don't know, one syllable, just Wrath. So when I
Yeah.
started going to like tournaments and stuff, I was still using the same PSN account when I played like Persona originally. And I didn't want to enter as legendary Wrath because it's like super pretentious and like I sounded full of myself. So I just dropped that and it was just Wrath.
Okay.
Oh, nice, nice. Yeah, the Monster Hunter games, like I just played the most recent one that was like on Xbox a few years ago, and then yeah, so that's really interesting because I would have never even thought about that. I was thinking it had to do like yeah, feel my wrath or something like that.
Yeah, now there's like if you're familiar with that show Ben 10, now he's got like an alien he can turn into called Wrath, spelled the same way.
Oh,
So
really?
now I'm doomed. If you Google it, like
I was about to
yeah,
say Wrath is good for SEO as well, but I guess not anymore.
no, not unique enough, but it's there
Fair
to
enough.
stay. It is what it is.
Nice. So, you talked about playing games with your brother. Like, what was your start in terms of like fighting games and stuff like that? Was that something that you started with him, or was it something that kind of
It
came on later on?
it kind of started with a friend from high school, a friend of mine, Bryce. He was really into a lot of these like anime games, not necessarily fighting games, but at some point he picked up Blaze Blue Continuum Shift Extend. He owned that and he had Calamity Trigger and he just played it for the story and he let me borrow it and play it for the story. And then I kind of enjoyed it. So we started like casually playing and we could do like 2-hit combos. We were so new. We thought like, well, Hakumen, he's got these big buttons that do big damage. So just always hit the big button that does the big damage. Why hit the fast button? Who needs that? What's the point?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We were terrible. But it was fun. And then at some point, I got kind of obsessed with it, and I started playing online. And I ran into somebody who had a microphone on, and I had a microphone on. Because back in the day, you could have microphones in fighting games. Imagine that now. That'd be too toxic.
Right.
Get the Justin Wong like you're gonna learn today clip all the time. So I ran into my good friend, beautiful dude on there. That's how we
Oh,
became
okay.
friends. Is uh, playing Blaze Blue. I was like a terrible Tager and a Bang, and he was a terrible Ragna and Relius. And we kind of convinced each other to start going to our local scenes. So I went to my local in Arizona, and he went to his, I think, in Santa Barbara.
Okay.
Okay, yeah,
And
I was gonna say.
yeah, so we kind of get to take credit for getting each other into the scene in that way. And
Oh,
I
nice.
saw like Persona came out, and I was really upset. I know Persona is my game now, but at the time I was like, "Oh my gosh, it's going to take all these Blaze Blue players away from me. I want to play Blaze Blue." Everyone's switching to Persona, but I did really like the game, and I saw Saboten Con. I happened to see. I don't remember who was in grand finals. It might have been like Lorenzo or oh, you know who it was? It was the Yukiko player.
Was that
I can't
Marvin?
think of his name. No, no. I can't remember it, so I don't wanna dwell on it too much, but I saw them in grand finals and like a cocky, dumb kid, I was like, "I could do this." Like, I could beat these people, so I started, like, Googling tournaments, and I found Dustloop, and, if you remember Justin Haterade from forever ago, he
Yep.
was, like, getting people he was gonna drive people out to the hazmat tournaments or hazbat tournaments, so, I hitched a ride with him and started going, and I'm here.
Nice.
Nice, nice. Yeah, you mentioned Beautiful Dude. That's a name that I remember. I think I met him at Undefeated. I think when
Super
when it
fun
was in
guy.
like yeah, when it was here. I think it was like the Super Bowl was on that weekend too, and I just remember like
Oh my god, that
talking
was
to
the
him.
year the Patriots came back. He was
Yeah,
he
yeah,
was
because he's
running
a
around the
Patriots
venue
fan, right?
screaming, "Always bet on Brady, always bet on Brady." He was
Yeah,
so
yeah,
happy.
yeah. That's right. That was the exact moment that I remember because I remember like I think I saw the score, whatever lead that the Falcons had, and I was just like, oh man, this game looks like it's over. And then I came back and like he was at the bar, and I'm just like, oh shit, they're coming back, and he goes, oh yeah, they're coming back.
You know what?
Oh man.
That weekend was so fun because fun, but also kind of frustrating, but also fun and frustrating because Julian, he was beautiful dude. He was staying with me at the time, and I lived with my parents at the time, so I had to bring him home with my family, and he promised me he wouldn't drink. He's like, "I won't drink this time, Ryan. I promise. We're not gonna drink." And then I think it was Armando or somebody. It might have been. I'm pretty sure it was Angelic. I think he gave him one drink. What he forced Julian to have one drink, and it was over. Like he was wasted the whole night. I had to lock his phone in my trunk and like
Oh
sober him
man.
up at Denny's. And before we could go home, I'm like, "Oh, I'm not letting you wake up my family. You're too loud." He's like, "No, Ryan, I'm perfect. I'm fine." Like, no, no.
There's a lot
It
of
was a
these
fun
stories that
weekend.
end with sobering up at Denny's, I've noticed.
Denny's is like the FGC hangout. You
Yeah.
gotta go there.
I was talking to a couple of people recently in the Tucson scene, and they were like, "You go to Denny's too?" And I'm like, "Dude, I've been going to Denny's since before you were born." Oh man.
Well, I mean, you got to find places that are open late,
Yep.
24 hours. It's like Denny's or IHOP or something like that, whatever's available.
Yep. So to bring it back to the history, so Persona, you pick it up and you start wrecking shop with it. What was your highest placing in Persona, if you remember?
Um, I got fourth at a lot of majors, so fourth, pick one.
A lot of
I
majors, as
never
in
never
like
broke into
big
top
majors,
three.
right?
Well,
Like
sure, but majors didn't have like that many entrants back then. We'd get like between like 50 to 100 people. So I'm much more proud of my placings in other games, even if I got like fifth at
okay,
a different game later on, because going to like Pinnacle in Vancouver for Strive, that game had over 200 entrants. Frosty Faustings, I got like seventh in Dragon Ball one year, and that had over 200 entrants. So that kind of thing just feels like a bigger deal to me.
okay. And
But
so when
probably fourth. Yeah, that was my curse at the time. I just couldn't quite break into top three.
I get you. Um, so we quickly have named Persona, Dragon Ball, and Strive, and so you mentioned Persona as your game, but I think a lot of people know you from Dragon Ball as well, right? The YouTube
Yeah, I would wager
content, right?
most people would, just because that's what probably 3/4 of my YouTube content has been. So
Okay.
that's going to be the thing people recognize the most. I did a poll on Twitter like a year ago, like, what character do you associate me with? And it was overwhelmingly Nappa from Dragon Ball, even though, I played Margaret and Mitsuru in Persona, Azrael and Blaze Blue, Balrog and Street Fighter, Hilda and Under Night and Birth. I'm trying to think others. I don't know. I don't want to go on.
You really like characters that have like four momentum moves, I've noticed.
um, Yeah, I kind of do. I think it's fun to like space those. Yeah, like the idea of like, hey, this move's like kind of negative, but if I like, hit it at just the tip, it's
Yeah,
spaced out in a way where my character gets to keep their momentum or keep their safety advantage, whatever you want to call it.
I get you.
Now I just play everybody. I don't know. I'll play anything.
And
It's
so,
kind of
and
fun
then,
not having an archetype anymore.
yeah, and then the other side of it is too is like just to bring it back to before YouTube era, like you also were running the tournaments as well. So you joined. We talked about how you joined the local scene and you started placing high, but when did you decide to run local tournaments here in Arizona?
Um, so it came kind of from like a bad place, admittedly. I was kind of frustrated that I would go to majors. By the way, this was the before times before we had rollback, a decade almost before rollback. So the online experience wasn't very good. And if you wanted to play with good players, you kind of had to play with them in person. But most of the really good Persona players at the time were in the tri-state area. So a lot of them, like SKD and Lord Knight, were all in New Jersey, New York. Um, some people in the Midwest, like Banana Ken, were, but that's still really far away. So I could do all of these option selects defensively that were coming out in the game at the time, but I couldn't
Mhm.
fight against them because I had no one else who would do them. So I couldn't practice fighting them, right? And training mode wasn't very good at the time, so you couldn't really like set that kind of thing up and practice. And I remember I went to Evo one year, like 2015, Persona was back there again. And
Okay.
I admittedly, I feel strongly that I had the best bracket path out of every American in the whole tournament. I had like the easiest path into top 8, and I choked and it didn't work out. And I played a bunch of other people that weekend, and I just felt like, man, I can win neutral, I can defend really well, but I can't open anyone up because everyone else is
Mhm.
doing, the new option selects that came out, but I don't know how to practice against that on my own. I don't have anyone that does this. And I got really discouraged. It felt like, well, if I don't live somewhere that has the scene and we don't have the net code that lets you play with the good people, it's like, how do I get that practice? And I was really discouraged. I was kind of thinking about like quitting because it kind of felt like, what was the point? Like I could tell I could be that good, but I'm not, and I don't have the resources. Kind of like the argument forever where it's like, well, Japan just has the best net code and they're so close together and they have all these tournaments.
The
They have the
the
best environment
arcades,
to be
yeah.
the best in every game. And lo and behold, now we have rollback in a lot of games and strong scenes everywhere that can play everyone. And now it's like the playing field is even now, right? I was looking for something like that, but I couldn't find it. And Dejixel in our scene, Justin, he kind of told me like, well, you can, if you're frustrated that the scene isn't giving you what you want, you can either quit or you can make it. So,
Mhm.
I don't think he even really remembers that, but he was kind of the person I talked to or vented to who kind of said something along the lines of that, where I just kind of felt like, you know what, sure, I'll just start running events and
Yeah.
see if people come out, see if people, um, you know, stick with a game and get good at it. And it didn't
Yeah.
really happen with the games at the time, Blaze Blue and Persona, but it eventually happened with like Dragon Ball and Strive. We have a really strong Strive scene right now. Not that I'm, running tournaments anymore, but um, it really grew. It was pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, it goes back to like we've interviewed quite a few people from OGs to some more newer people, and like the people that have organized tournaments. Like a lot of it has come from like a kind of a selfish place. Like Rick was like, I want to play more people in CVS2 and tournament settings, that kind of thing, and that's kind of like exactly what you're talking about, right? Like I'm going out to these majors or these national events, these bigger events outside of Arizona, and I'm running into stuff that I feel like I should be able to fight against, but I can't because I don't have the local talent to make me better. So sometimes it does take taking the initiative to kind of want to cultivate that. And
It
that's cool that
came
the Jigsaw was like the one that's be like, well, if you don't want to do it, then, or I mean, if it's not giving you what you want, like it's time for you to get what you want out of
Yeah, it came from a selfish place, but it
it.
ended in a wholesome place because I did find out I really did love running events. I got the warm fuzzies doing it, and I could still like enter. I
Yeah.
couldn't continue to enter every time because eventually we were running like between 4 to 6 games every
Mm,
month. It was like, yeah, I have a whole video on my YouTube channel just about what that's like running those events. And back when I did that, I just walked through the whole day of doing it. I interviewed people and show the process of packing all my equipment up, bringing it over there, setting it up, running the brackets themselves, and by the time it's over, it's like 1 in the morning, right? So,
yeah.
but it's
Just
fun, I enjoyed all of that, honestly.
yeah, I'm just thinking about the fact that like a lot of times when we talk about TOs, we talk about it being like a selfless thing, but it's like a lot of us got into it because it was a selfish reason. So it's like like I did it mainly because like just my local tournaments were running like super late. Like we were running 60-man brackets in like 4 hours, and I'm just like, the hell are we doing, guys? It's like they shouldn't take this long. It's just like, so I took it upon myself to do that, but it's just like it's because I wanted to get home early. It was like this is ridiculous.
And I've seen it from like the player perspective quite a bit. Is like, you have a top player in our local scene that, eventually elevates to the national level and gets humbled or gets a wake up call about the things that happen out of state. And I've seen people react positively and negatively to it. Like I've seen people be like, okay, like Ryan here, and be like, you know what, I'm gonna elevate my scene so that way if they can make me better too. I've seen other people blame the scene and be like, these guys suck. I'm never gonna talk to them again. I'm just gonna focus on online or whatever, which again wasn't an option for you, but nowadays it can be. And I don't know. It's a I think everybody handles that wake up call differently. But I think
Mhm.
that the people that decide to give back to the community are often the most successful. They may not get completely what they're looking for. Like I'm not sure if everybody ended up learning those option selects, Ryan, but it
Nope.
sounded like you. Right.
No.
Right. So the scenes, like, that's another thing I've learned is just as a player and as a TO, but mainly as a player, is that like I can't force these people to get better, but at the very least I can put exposure on the scene, and when that happens, sometimes the top players that I want to learn from come to me instead. Or,
Yeah.
or like that happened a lot with Marvel 3, with where Angelic was, he was trying to elevate the Marvel 3 scene as much as he could, but then he was also bringing people from out of state to come play too. And I'm pretty sure that happened quite a bit for your tournaments too, Ryan.
Yeah, we did get some people from out of state who would occasionally pop in. Not as much as you'd expect, but eventually in future games, I kind of got exactly what I wanted. I didn't get it, right away in the game I wanted, but over time the scene grew, and I had found it by the time Dragon Ball came around. And I mean, even Street Fighter Five was different because the scene kind of exploded right away with that game. So many people wanted to play it, but I got it with that as well. We had tons of competition in that game. Um, Strive has that now. Even Exert got like pretty competitive for a while, but eventually Digixel got so good he just crushed everybody every month.
Oh man, he's on for audio viewers. He's actually playing on the stream right now. A video of him
Oh,
playing
yep.
against Macho Punk, and it was his jam that was the big one. I remember like he's nationally known for that jam, if I recall correctly.
Yeah, he had a really good set with Kizzy at Frosty one year. And I think Kizzy even made top eight again. Like he came back and made top eight that year, I think. But Digixel's the one that put him in losers.
Nice.
Nice, nice. Yeah. Speaking of your events, like I had to look it up briefly, but because I couldn't remember the name, but it was AZ Airdashers is what you were calling it. And if I remember correctly, you basically did those as like free entry events, didn't you?
Yeah, we honestly didn't feel like we could get enough people to enter if we were charging entry fee.
Yeah.
Because the venue was free. We were using a local tech college, the University of
Yeah.
Advancing Technology. One of my friends is an alumni there, so he'd always get the space, and we just run stuff there. And at the time, people genuinely would not enter if we had you know, an entry fee.
Yeah.
We'd get like 7 people, and then the eighth person would be like, I guess I'll make it a full bracket so you guys don't have to do a round robin. They'd enter at the last second, but that wouldn't happen if we charged an entry fee. So
Yeah.
eventually, people wanted one for some reason. Enough people were serious about the games they wanted to play. The scene grew enough, and all of a sudden, people wanted the opportunity to make money or be a pot monster. They
Yeah.
enjoyed that, so we started doing it eventually.
Yeah.
That's
Well, I
that's
mean,
another
well,
thing
in
I've.
terms of,
Oh,
go
sorry.
ahead.
That's another thing I've noticed about the Arizona anime scene is like when I joined the scene back then for Street Fighter 4, it was basically everybody had everybody played all the different anime games. It wasn't just like, hey, I'm going to focus specifically on Melty Blood or I'm going to focus specifically on BB. It was I'm going to play every single game at kind of a surface level and then just be really good across the spectrum. And I think that contributed a lot to the idea of let's not pay money for this. We're not taking it serious. We're trying to, just have fun, play the games, and spread ourselves really across multiple scenes. And I remember that's like I when we were marketing this show in particular, this episode, I was talking about jumping into the world of anime. Back then, that's what it was. It was either Street Fighter or
Hmm.
Marvel or like very specific game scenes, and then anime. Anime was everything. Like it's a very very wide brush to be painted with. And so it sounds like over the years it's actually kind of narrowed a little bit and there's individual scenes. But I still, I'll go to the gaming zone on Fridays and I'll see the same anime crew like switch between games like nobody's business, not have to worry about muscle memory or anything. They'll be playing a different game every time, realistically.
Yeah, I have a good idea who you're thinking of too.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I was just gonna say in terms of like as a TO, like that's something you gotta take into account too, like the free entry versus paid entry, because like there are people that want to play those games, but they don't want to be pot monsters, like you said. Like, oh well, I don't want to put money in here because I'm not gonna win anything. Where it's just like some people don't mind doing that. They want the tournament experience. They want the money to be on the line and feel invested into it. Whereas like John was saying, like you can enter a bunch of free tournaments and like how many people are really going to take those seriously, right? Like you might play like a character that you're secondary or your third character and just kind of go through the motions because it's like, hey, I'm just playing for free anyway, versus hey, I could win $50 or something for this, so I should play more seriously.
Yeah, I think there's also like the casual aspect of it too, and I don't mean it like in that like casuals are bad or anything for the scene, but in that for Street Fighter and for Marvel, which are the two scenes that I'm most familiar with, those are franchises that just they tickle the nostalgia really easily, and so it's really easy to get casuals into the game. Not even from a fighting game mechanic standpoint, just being like, hey, I knew Street Fighter, that was a pop culture thing in the '90s, or I know Marvel, like they have really popular movies right now, and I think then like I guess Persona probably had some of that. I remember I even tried Persona, and that was a
Yeah,
lot of
I
fun.
did too.
Yeah, but I think Dragon Ball is like then it sounds like Dragon Ball is when the scene kind of exploded and it ended up like being in more parity with the rest of the with the other fighting games in our scene where that was like a hyper focused. There's Dragon Ball players, right?
Yeah, I think Dragon Ball was the first time that an anime Airdasher kind of game sort of just broke off and became its own scene. Because
Yeah.
like way back when, it was like I wanted to play Persona, but then a new version of BlazBlue came out and no one would play Persona anymore. It was like we
Right.
played BlazBlue that year, then Persona got the Ultimax update. We played Persona that year, then we got Guilty Gear Xrd and we played Guilty Gear that year, and then BlazBlue got another update. We played BlazBlue that year. It's like we just hop around and we casually play the other ones.
Hmm.
But now, and it was like one scene hopping around, right? But then Dragon Ball came out and it was such a big thing. It dragged people in from every scene. You had
Yeah.
Street Fighter players playing it, you had Mortal Kombat players playing it, you had Skullgirls players in it, you had Smash players in it, and it persists as its own thing now. It's just they're the Dragon Ball players, the Dragon Ball scene, and now strives its own thing. Um, it doesn't feel like a homogenous group anymore. It's not just one big anime scene, and I
Yeah.
think it's probably a good thing that there's enough people playing each of those games that you can, you don't have to hop around just to have someone to play with.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think with Dragon Ball 2, like for me growing up, like I mean I don't care for Dragon Ball. That's not really my thing, like the show or anything like that. The characters, like none of that resonates with me. But growing up, the like licensed game, like there was just kind of this stigma about them that they all just sucked, right? Like it didn't matter whether it was a movie, a TV show, or whatever. It was just like, you know what, whoever the developer was like, if I slap a license on this, like there's going to be enough people that buy this piece of crap that it's going to be profitable, and it doesn't need to be good. And like there was so many Dragon Ball games. Like I remember all kinds of stuff, from PlayStation to whatever, that I was just like, I think I got like a pirated PS1 in like 2000. Like I was super late to the game, and I remember there was Dragon Ball games for that, and I was just like, man, these games are complete trash, dude. Like who would play these just for fun? Like even if you like the characters. So the thing that like the evolution of games to now, like I really like the fact that I don't know if it's more of like the studios or whatever, or the people that hold the licenses that want good content to come out, because it's one of those things. It's just like if there's a good game, like people are gonna gravitate to it. Like you said, like Dragon Ball Fighters became a big thing because it was like, here's this show that has a huge install base. It's like one of the most popular animes, whether you think it fits in that genre or whatever, and here's finally a good game that's tied into that. And like for me, even like just spectating it and looking at it, and I'm just like, man, visually this game looks cool. Like this actually reminds me of like the show, even though I don't really watch the show. And I was just like, for people that are into this, like they're gonna love this, like just looking at that.
Yeah. I I fucking love Dragon Ball. I just want to be very clear. I think Dragon Ball is awesome. I am of the right age where I grew up with, like, going home and watching it on Toonami and stuff, and that was a big portion of it. In addition to like being like I was a Marvel player at one point, so a 3v3 tag game with my favorite anime, one of my favorite animes as the property behind it. It blew my mind. And yeah, I
Yeah,
remember
exactly.
Benny, what you're talking about as far as like the Budokai games being like the creme de la creme of Dragon Ball games, and even those weren't especially popular or very good fighting games, but they were just
Yeah.
fun games to play with your friends, right? Yeah, I just that Dragon Ball Fighters is possibly one of the, to me it's one of the best fighting games of this generation. Like it, to me it's the Street Fighter 4 of the 2010s.
There's
Yeah.
a reason that like every so often you go online, you see someone arguing like, why can't Arc, like, when is Arxis gonna make One Piece fighters? When is Arxis gonna
Oh,
make,
yeah,
you know,
exactly.
like My Hero fighters? You know, whatever property that they really want. You know, that even like, I want my Full House fighters.
Yeah.
Let's have
Well, yeah, because I mean,
Danny
if
and
you think
Joey go at it. You know, like.
because if you think about like anime fighters, like one thing that I always saw, like you said, Budokai, or it wasn't Budokai like one of those like 3D kind of fighters, right? Or
Yeah,
those like
like the
yeah,
Cell shaded, yeah.
3D, you know, I don't know
it's
what
like
you call those, like arena anime
yeah.
fighters or
Yeah,
something.
that's typically what I've always seen. Like I think that was like the Kill la Kill games. Like that was that's what that was. And then even like the Demon Slayer like fighting game that's out there, that's what that is, right? It's not a traditional like 2D fighting game or even like a 3D like a Soul Calibur thing. It's just kind of like yeah, it's like that arena like first person, third person kind of battle it out kind of thing.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
mean, there was
I
always a lot of emphasis on being able to transform, and that's, again, that's the draw of the series in a lot of ways. And so you're like, hey, I want to make, like, let's just stand full screen and charge keys so that way we can get to the cool shit and see the cool shit. uh, and I, again, to fighters' credit, like they were able to do that and make it a good competitive fighting game at the same time.
Yeah.
It's, and yeah, it's just a, so yeah, to kind of dial the spotlight back onto you, Ryan, like the you know, Dragon Ball gets big, and so when did you decide you wanted to start making YouTube videos or just content in general for it?
That's exactly what I was gonna ask him too.
um so when I was in high school, I actually had a YouTube channel
Oh,
forever ago, you know, like over a decade ago, and it took me like a year and a half, and I got like 1,000 subs total, and you know, that felt like staggering growth at the time. You know, I'd get like 200
yeah.
views of videos, like, wow, 200 people, that's amazing, that's so much. And I was just making like Call of Duty and Minecraft videos and crap. That channel's gone, by the way. You can't find it. You will never find it. No one's ever gonna see it. Only my closest friends know. But like, I did that a long time ago, and I did kind of enjoy it. I didn't have the thought like, oh, I want to go back and do this again. You know, I kind of had my fill. I was done. Um, but then Dragon Ball came out, and season two, I was really good in season two. That was probably the best I was. And you know, I realized GT Goku was like running rampant. He was like, you know, in every team. Everyone needed to know how to play him or fight him. So I just made a GT Goku guide, and I felt like, oh, this is like really good. Actually, I might have made a Janemba guide first because also people didn't know what was going on with him. And I genuinely like had no plans to like continue the YouTube thing. The
Mm,
channel, all it was for before was archives from the tournaments I was running. That's all it was.
yeah.
And I just got such a good response on those. It's like, you know what, I could do this. You know, it was a niche that like didn't exist. Like there weren't, in my opinion, like there were people making guides and stuff. I'm not going to call anyone out, but like I didn't
Yeah.
think there was a single channel making good content, like good guides that were
Yeah.
genuinely going to help people. It was like very surface level stuff. It wasn't scripted. There weren't outlines for what they were going to talk about. You could tell they were just like turning on the camera and like, "Hey guys, it's me. Let's talk about this thing." And you know, 9 minutes or 10 minutes, however long to get the mid roll ads, and then they were done. And they didn't even look at it. They'd upload it. You know, it was just, I don't want to say it was bad, but it was kind of bad.
It's
It
low
wasn't bad.
effort. Low effort is
And
probably the
Yeah,
best
a
way to
little
put it.
effort. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a good way to put it.
yeah,
Yeah.
I just noticed there wasn't anyone making like good edited, scripted, well thought out guides. So
Yeah.
I just wanted to talk about all the stuff I wish people knew, and I made stuff that for me was helpful because I feel like is like good note taking. You know, is what's better to refresh your memory on a character or a matchup than a video you made with all the stuff you thought was important,
Yep.
and you even know how you like set up the video, so you know how like far in to skip if you want to like just refresh yourself on like, oh, what are their mix up options? Like, how do I deal with this tool? What are the assists good for? How do I deal with the assist?
When I was
Um,
younger and like we were like for school work, right? I was always told to like if you want to practice something like for flashcards or something like that, the best way to do it is to either make the flashcards yourself or write it down. Like it's not the like you may already know it, but the act of writing it down helps kind of like crystallize it in your brain, right? And I
Yeah.
imagine making those YouTube videos the same deal. Like you make them like probably just as much for you as it is for everybody
yeah,
else.
I don't want to upload anything if I wouldn't watch it myself.
Yeah.
Fair
And
enough.
by the way, there's a reason for the sorry to change topics. There's a reason why writing stuff down helps so much. It's
Yeah.
because if you just say something or think it, it passes in a second. You can
Yeah.
say a whole sentence in like 2 seconds and it's gone. If you write it out, it takes so much longer. And the whole thing is you just dwell on that thought for longer, and it helps you actually like store it in your memory.
Oh.
It's not that people have bad memory; it's that um, they're bad at putting stuff into their memory.
Yeah.
So you have to spend enough time on something if you want to actually like put it away.
So
So
Yeah.
would you recommend like rewatches of your videos then, like to people, like watch it once and then watch it again so that way you really like
um
absorb everything, or
I don't know. I mean, I wouldn't mind the ad revenue, but uh just for me personally, it's like, well, I spent like a week on this video. I'm gonna retain the information so much because I had to like listen to myself talk about it
Yeah.
that whole time and watch it, rewatch it, script it, rescript it, rewrite it. Um, and it's another thing I heard a lot growing up, and I think most people have heard this. The best way to learn something is to teach it to somebody else. So
Yeah.
same kind of
That's a good
thing.
way too. Yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
really didn't plan to stick with the YouTube thing. Sound like a grandma. The YouTube. You watch that YouTube grandchild of mine. But I really didn't want to stick with it. But at some point, I just realized like, oh, this is like I'm kind of really good at this.
Yeah. Yeah.
When I was younger, I thought like, oh, I could be a teacher. Teaching seems like something that would fit my just me really well. But my mom's a
Yeah.
teacher, and I know how much it sucks, and how little they
Yeah.
get paid, and how little
Yeah.
control they have over what they actually teach, and how they interact with people. And you don't get to do things the way you think is right. You have to do it the way um,
Yeah. Follow the curriculum and
just
all that
there's
stuff.
just a lot of outside factors, and I know at some point it would drive me nuts to care that much about something and not have any control over it, so I didn't wanna go down that path. But
Sure.
this was like, "Oh, I could talk about the thing that's like my hobby." I could have the same kind of itch get scratched, but for a fun thing instead of a serious thing.
Yeah, yeah, that's a good way to put it. Because I mean, yeah, growing up too, like, I mean, I helped a lot of people in high school, and like, I remember when I graduated, they were like, "Man, I don't know if I'd get through high school if it wasn't for you." And like, I always thought about being a teacher, but then like, yeah, a lot of it was like, it's not very lucrative. It's not, this and that, and or, kind of things like you said, like, you don't want to invest yourself into something like that when you don't have a lot of input in what you do. So to like, do like a YouTube channel around something that you love to do or something that you're interested in, that's pretty cool. Because there's plenty of people that kind of just make content just to make content because, for whatever reason. So to like have it be your, something that you're very interested in is, yeah, that's really cool, man.
For whatever reason, like a podcast that goes through the history of Arizona people. Right. But like I'm actually kind of going through that right now with the Street Fighter scene, and we'll get to the COVID pandemic probably in a bit on the show here. But since we're coming back from the pandemic, there's been a lot of new people that have joined the Street Fighter scene, and I found that there's a couple different ways that people teach in our scene. Like there's the tough love way, and then there's the kind of more structured instruction way. And both ways I've seen work and build big scenes. Well, sometimes the tough love one actually makes a smaller scene, but it makes a more focused scene. Um,
Yeah.
but for the other instructional way, that one's easier to get into. But I've seen a lot of people lean on experience so hard when they teach that. What am I trying to say? The short version of it is, if you teach somebody, it's ultimately like you need to know that they're going to teach you something in return as you're teaching them. Like kind of like what you said, Ryan, the best way to learn something is to teach somebody. But I found that mentoring is the wrong way to put it, but like showing these younger guys about like how to play Street Fighter and the different fundamentals around that and game specifics about Street Fighter, like it's they in turn take what I've taught them and then remix it and then use it on me, and then they teach me, they beat the shit out of me with it, and it's so gratifying. It's so gratifying to see that happen, and then I end up having to come up with counters for that stuff, counters for the stuff that I taught them, and I'm like, oh my god, I'm getting better because these people are like these guys have like they've taken what I've taught them and then move beyond that. And like I feel like there's a lot of times people get on a soapbox and then they're like, this is the way it is, and you have like I have everything to teach you and you have nothing to teach me. You need to, like, it's almost like a way to like kind of punch down almost, and then they get closed-minded about it. So my advice to anyone who's listening when you're teaching somebody is make sure you always remember what they can teach you in return. And it's not just about experience, it's about keeping an open mind. All that to say though is I have noticed kind of a through line for you, Ryan, where you mentioned the YouTube, like the YouTube videos are almost like an organic derivative or organic evolution of the tournaments. Your reasoning for running the tournaments was that you wanted to get better and you wanted people to use the shit on you locally that you ran into nationally, and you wanted to try to teach those people through those tournaments. And then you transition to YouTube videos, and then you're like, I'm not just going to teach the local scene, I'm going to teach everybody about these options, so that way they use those options on me too, right? Like it elevates the entire scene, it elevates the skill level of the entire scene at almost at a global level, really. It's not just national, it's a global level.
Yeah, so you've definitely heard the phrase "save that shit for nationals," right?
Yeah.
It doesn't work. It works in a game where you can't play people and the average skill level isn't like high enough where you reasonably think other people could have figured that out. If you like found some crazy tech that you think is going to win you a tournament, the chance of that happening now is so low because we have Twitter, we have YouTube, people share information so fast in Discords and online. The chance of you coming up with something that's completely unique and completely new and no one else is going to come up with it before Evo, and you're just going to hide it and not use it in any matches with anyone or find out any of the problems with it. Like, you might think you came up with the coolest thing ever, and then you play in an actual match and someone's instinct actually accidentally beats it. And you won't know that if you don't try it on people, you know?
Right.
So, I don't know. Something I've learned is that you will not be better off saving stuff for, a special occasion. You want to just put it out there and let people learn to deal with it and learn how to deal with the people who've learned to deal with it. And then you'll run into someone who hasn't done their homework and you'll know you just have that in the bag. And then you'll run into someone who has done their homework and you'll still have a chance.
Yeah.
So, and it's just a constant, it just feeds into the process of getting better constantly. So, just don't do anything to hold yourself back, because that's what you're doing when you're like saving tech, you're holding back for like when you think it matters, but it always backfires in my opinion.
Yeah.
We were just talking about that with I was gonna say we were just talking about that with Forward last week in terms of like, especially nowadays, like, like you said, Twitter, Discord, people want to get that stuff out there. Like, they want to put their name or attach the tech to themselves. Like, who discovered this? Oh, Rath discovered this, and with this character. It's like, oh, okay. And then it's just like, yeah, and like I was talking about like the whole mentality of like putting it out there so that people can figure it out, right? Like, you find the gaps in what can beat it or something like that, right? You can find the weaknesses in what you've discovered. Well, it doesn't work against this. It doesn't work against, if they tech or if they do this.
And would you like think about what your end goal is anyway? Like, if you're choosing whether to withhold or share information, are you trying to like what would be preferable to you? Do you want to give yourself the best chance of winning a single tournament and then never again? Because once you've used it once, it's out in the open.
Yeah.
People can lab it. People can figure out what you're doing. Or do you want to give yourself the best chance of placing really high all the time? Just do what's the best for you long term. Because I think most people would agree they'd rather be consistent than have like one-time glory, right?
Yeah, I think that there's
and it's still might not work out. You could save that and then not even get a chance to use it. Or you could save it and like you might just run into a character that just knocks you down one time and puts you in a blender and you don't even get to play. Maybe you just guessed wrong a little bit too much and didn't work out and you didn't even get to take advantage of that thing.
I think that there's when you look at tournament winners, right? It's usually about who's the best player, and it's less so about who's the best knowledge checker, I guess. And then what happens is if you end up saving stuff and hiding stuff from other players, like yeah, you'll run them through the knowledge check, and they may pass or fail, and you may win off that, but then again that knowledge check eventually just gets figured out, and you I don't know. Like I guess there's some character archetypes, like you said, the blender characters that do thrive off that. There's like almost like an expressive thing there, where it's like how deep is your bag of tricks gonna go. I don't know. That's a tough one.
I was
for
even
me.
just thinking about a character that just 50-50s you. Like you know what it is, but you guessed heads when it came up tails,
Yeah, that's fair.
Sometimes you just, sometimes you just don't come out on top in that kind of situation.
Yeah, and I think oftentimes the stuff that's really like eclectic oftentimes has a huge hard counter to it, and it's just about whether or not people will find that counter. Um, as somebody who played the
Something
Street Fighter 6 beta this weekend, there's a lot of things that I did that have hard counters, but people don't know yet.
something that comes up has come up for me a lot in the past is when I've found those things that those tricks that work every time.
Yeah,
Right? Like this just is a free hit. Just do it every time. No one knows how to deal with it. Just keep doing it, keep doing it, keep doing it. And even when they know it's like the situation comes up so fast that they don't recognize it in time, um, you can develop like kind of an autopilot because of that. You're so
yep,
you've been conditioned to think it's a free hit when it's not. And you'll run into someone who deals with it properly and you won't be able to make yourself change because you're so practiced at doing this one thing in this one
yep.
situation almost every single time, and it kind of holds you back in a way. It's really easy to just condition yourself autopilot.
There's a style of player out there that takes pride in those kinds of those mix-ups, I suppose. I guess they're mix-ups for lack of a better phrase, but I would challenge folks that think like that or that take that pride in it to be like, well, wouldn't you want to make your mix-up or your tech the most bulletproof thing possible? Wouldn't you want to optimize it and be able to account for every situation? And I think that the best like scientists that I've seen in fighting across fighting games are usually the ones that are willing to watch their tech get defeated in order to find more. I remember talking to Forward when we were learning Guilty Gear Strive together, and I was I was playing, and then I was doing okay against him, but then eventually he just started mauling me, and eventually he was like, "Okay, I think we're done. We're gonna take a break, but I need to go lose. I want to lose." And I remember hearing that and being very very inspired, because it was like it's not that you want to lose and you want to get that bad feeling, you want to get outplayed. It's that you need to know if your shit's actually gonna work. If like there's some like, and again, it wasn't a slight to me or anything when I was playing. It was just more like I need to find someone that can beat this so I can know if it's replicable, or if it's repeatable, and if it's something that is actually going to be sound and something I can rely on in tournament.
Yeah, I think that makes complete sense. And even when you find something that does have like answers, if someone's ready, it's good to, it's still good to do it sometimes. I'm not trying to make the case that you should never do the tricky thing that has an answer, because there's a lot of games out there where there isn't, you know, like Dragon Ball, for example, there isn't in most cases a solid 50-50. People have figured out a lot over time, but for the most part, throughout most of the game's life, getting that first hit before you have Oki, before you have a crazy setup on an incoming character or something like that, back when like the snap meta was big in season 2, all the mix up was reactable. Dragon Rush was a throw essentially, but it was like a throw that was so slow. If you were really focused on it, you could react to it. Cross
Yeah.
ups were reactable. The universal overhead was reactable, but it was just about overwhelming them with enough stuff. You're trying to increase the mental stack. So if you're trying to do that, these kind of gimmicky things can be good, but you just can't treat them like they're always going to work. It can be one extra thing to do on top of all your solid stuff, but it can't be the thing you do. Can't be the thing you do.
Yeah.
That is the forbidden fruit of the nooch. Everybody wants the neutral. And that's, I think most modern fighting games, starting with Dragon Ball, have kind of really leaned on that, being like, we're going to be a little bit less oppressive with offense, and we're going to lean more on neutral. Even games that came out before Dragon Ball, like Street Fighter V is my main example, that has been balanced in that direction, where it's like, let's focus more on neutral, give more defensive options, and make everything less bullshit. And then the bullshit happens after you get the first hit, honestly. Usually. Usually.
Yeah, it is interesting because in season 1, I remember throw loops were everywhere, and
Yeah.
then they kind of took those out.
Yep. It was weird. They left them in season 2 and 3 for some characters, and so I think of that as like, oh, they just didn't know if they wanted them in or not, and then eventually they just took them all out because they realized that this is what the player base wants right now. This is what the player base currently feels is fair, you know.
Yeah. Oh.
Cool. So, there was another topic that I guess I was gonna try to find like a natural segue into, but I'm just doing it like this, doing it raw. So, um, you know, one thing that I mentioned it earlier. Here's the segue. Here's the segue. I mentioned it earlier that the Street Fighter V scene was coming back from the pandemic. We were basically kind of all of us were segmented to just online. Every fighting game scene. EVO was online in the year 2020, or it was supposed to be online in the year 2020. And online tournaments suddenly became more legitimate because they were the only option. And in particular for the anime games, they have this latest trend of backporting rollback into them. And I'm curious about your opinions as far as like how that's changed the scenes of the games, especially with the idea of an older game that has essentially been phased out for a newer game. What is there cannibalizing there? Is there like what does that look like for both locally and nationally?
I have a couple, I guess, like surface level or like high level broad thoughts, and we can kind of pick a direction to go from there. The first is I think all these game scenes have gotten much better. Even the old games in general, like Persona came back, and the scene is better now than it was 2 years ago, for example, right? Like now that it's got rollback and tournaments every week or every 2 weeks.
And when you say better, are you talking about skill level, or are you talking
Yeah, skill
about
level,
size?
skill level.
Okay.
Yeah. Also, I don't know about size. I haven't kept up with some of these scenes or some of these individual games in so long that I can't really compare to like 5 years ago because I haven't played Persona in like 8 years or 7 years.
Yeah.
So I can't do that. But I can tell that the actual players are getting better. Maybe not all the top players are sticking with every game. Like you could make the argument that like the really, really good people are all playing Street Fighter 5 and Strive right now, you know, like or a Smash game or something. Like you could argue that like, well, if Leffen went back and played, you know, Persona, like he could be the best player if he put in like 3 months of work. You can make the argument that if Punk focused on, you know, Blaze Blue, he apparently Blaze Blue is like his favorite game, one of his favorite
Oh,
games.
really?
Didn't know
So
that.
like he could, you know, he could maybe be the best in that game. I'm not saying that the best players in those games are the best that have ever played it, but all those players are better than they were before rollback came out. And the scenes I think overall are on average much stronger. The other thought I have is local scenes are um, I don't want definitely not dying is not the right word, but local tournaments are much more challenging, especially with anime games than they used to be. It's much more
Yeah.
challenging to have people take offline local tournaments as seriously as before, for a bunch of reasons. Not even just rollback, but that is a big part of it. It's not even just the pandemic, but that is a part of it. And then also, I just think I mean, I don't know if it's a result of the pandemic, but kind of fighting games as a whole are much more, there's a lot more content around them now. So there's more tournaments, there's more videos, there's more streams. People couldn't go to tournaments for a long time, and like, you know, all these sponsored players needed to show value and you know do something and grow something, you know, there's no tournaments to compete for in person for like a whole year because of the pandemic. What do I do at this time? And all of them came to the same conclusion: we're going to make YouTube videos, you know, we're going to stream full time, we're going to, you know, make this our job. And I think most of them found out as a result that it's much more stable and better for their livelihood if they just focus on that and the tournaments come second. Or online tournaments are a kind of a means to grow their channel and stuff. Why would I go to an in-person tournament, spend a whole weekend traveling? Like, let's pretend I'm like a huge sponsored player with 100,000 subscribers or something. Why would I
Yeah.
travel to a major, spend a Thursday traveling, be there 3 days, fly back on a Monday, lose basically 5 days of streaming, 5 days of revenue just to go to a tournament where if I take first place, I'm gonna win, like, my travel back, you know? Like, why would I do that when I could
Yeah.
go online, play an online tournament, potentially win money, get ad revenue from the stream I'm running, get a YouTube video out of it if I win, like, it just makes
Yeah.
more logistical sense to them,
Yeah.
from, like, a job perspective.
It feels like the model nowadays for those players is to use the majors as almost like a marketing meet and greet kind of thing, to
Yeah.
get the brand out there to say, hey, I was at this tournament. But ultimately, yeah, that's not where the bread's coming from.
From what I've seen, I almost feel like majors for a lot of them are a lot of like top players are kind of like a vacation almost now. It's like let's just go hang out with all my friends and like go to a
Yeah.
tournament and have that old feeling back.
Sure.
But like the real business is online. Not
Yeah.
speaking for everybody, but I do kind of get that vibe where they go in person. They have such a good damn time.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Like I think I saw a tweet from I'm not sure which streamer it was, so I'm not gonna try to dwell or guess on who it was. But yeah, I think I saw something about excuse me, that exact situation was just like, well, why should I go to this tournament when I could be streaming, and I think I'm gonna shift my focus to mainly streaming and playing online tournaments. And I think another thing with that is like the kind of the rise of the online player, right? Like before, like the thought was like, well, this person you can't just play online and then come out to an offline event and do well. But we've had numerous people that have done that, and like they take their time, they spend their time online and they play online and get their experience online, doing the streaming, for their viewers or whatever, making YouTube content, and then coming to offline events and then still playing well. So it's like they're not going to offline events. If you think of like Smug or I think there was even like Wolf Prone back in the day. It was like that was the one people were like, oh, he just he's at home, he's playing online, then he'll just come out to the majors and he does work. And it's just like there wasn't a lot of like local tournament play that people were like seeing them at. It was just like, oh, these guys are just online, we know their names online, and they'll search whatever Capcom CFN or whatever to find their matches, and they're like, oh, these guys are they're doing work online, and then they're coming offline and doing the same thing.
Yeah. I
Oh,
think we're.
another. Oh,
Oh,
go ahead.
go ahead, Ryan. That's fine.
Oh, well, I was going to say another kind of like side effect of rollback being as prevalent as it is and as good as it is in most cases is we've lost, for the most part, we've lost that feeling of like you have to live somewhere to be good. Where
Mhm.
it's, everyone's always said that about Japan for like in the FGC for forever because they're really close together, which means they have low ping. So when they play online, it's better than everywhere else. Still not perfect, but better. And they
Yeah.
have, they're close together. So if they want to meet in person, go to an arcade or someone's house or whatever they have, when you live close to a lot of good people, you can just meet up and play, right?
Yeah.
And in almost every single game, it's like you can live anywhere and be a top player now. But
Mhm.
there's still some games where the netcode's bad, and you notice all the best players, or like half of the best players, live within like 100 miles of each other. And like
Oh,
Dragon Ball right now, that's going on in France. Like the French players are super good at this game because one, they love it and they stuck with it and they're really damn good. Like there's and also not just France, but also like neighboring
yeah,
countries as
Europe.
well. But in general, they're like pretty close together. Where like if I wanted in Dragon Ball to take it seriously, and I wanted to play with like let's pretend Sonic Fox was focusing on the game. I don't know what they're doing right now. I think they're
Mhm.
in like Washington now. Like that's too far. This game's netcode sucks. I'm not going to do that. Why would they want to do that? So and it's not the same experience. But they're over in France. They have someone running consistent events. Damascus. He runs Wanted every week. It's fucking awesome. Love that. Love. I don't know if you've ever watched what he does, but he has like the
Yeah.
highest quality like stream I think. Period. And then they have really good people who live close together, and they can just keep elevating each other's skill level because they have that access. I think once Dragon Ball gets rollback, we're going to see a bunch more people catch up to them. But for now, it's like they can't. But in every other game, it's like, the best player in the world could live anywhere. They could live in Kansas, they could live in Texas, they could live in Latin America, they could live in Canada, they could, wherever, as long as they have, within like 120 ping of someone, they could get reasonably good experience and practice everything they need to practice in order to get super good.
Yeah, to put my player hat on for a second, like I used to think very poorly of online as being a legitimate form of practice, but then when the pandemic happened, it wasn't even just like this is all I've got. I better just deal with it. It wasn't even that. It was like a weird realization where I was like, oh, to be good at these video games, it's a summation of how many matchups you know, and realistically, like the bigger scenes were always the stronger ones in any fighting game that I played, and that was because they covered the most matchups. So online could theoretically be used for that, where,
Mhm.
in Arizona here, we don't have a really good well, let me just try to think of a just random example. Let's just say we didn't have a really good cami player. We do have a good cami player. His name's Moss. He's awesome. But if we didn't have a good cami player, I could hit up somebody in California and say, let's get some sets and learn the matchup that way. Or like a poison player or something like that. And again, we have a good poison player too, so I'm not shitting on you, Sam. But that's the thing though, is like once I realized that, I was like, okay, so if I just need to know X amount of matchups, then I can start looking outside of my scene. My scene won't be able to provide those for me, and then online kind of helps round me out as a player. But then eventually, as I got further and further down the line, I'm like, well, actually, the even the characters that are covered in our scene are also prevalent online, and they're better online. So theoretically, I could just practice with them instead. And what I'd noticed is just like the feeling of the scene dissipating, the local scene dissipating, where I found myself not necessarily wanting to practice with the locals as much. I just wanted to practice with the best of each matchup. And at the time in the pandemic, that was fine. That was my only option anyway. I didn't have any guilt as far as like not giving back to the scene then. But nowadays, I have to make that decision where I'm like, do I want to practice with somebody locally who may or may not grasp the entirety of the matchup, or do I want to
Yeah.
play with somebody who does know the matchup fully out of state, but now they're not in my tribe, and I don't have a tribe to work with to like push and be happy with anymore. So it's kind of it's a really awkward catch 22, I think.
Yeah, that was kind of the first point I wanted to make about just kind of how things have changed since we got rollback and since COVID, and just kind of where things are at right now. And it feels like the offline scene changed in part because now people don't have to go offline to have a good
Mhm.
experience. Before it was like, well, I could play a good, I don't know, I'm just gonna say like if I want to play Persona online, I could play a good Yukiko online, or I could play, but it'd be a terrible experience, or I could play an average Yukiko in person. I'm not calling anybody out. I'm not thinking of a specific Yukiko player or anything like that. It's the first character that came to my mind. Um, but that would be a better experience to play the average player in person because it was like the real experience. It's a real, the stuff that's reactable is reactable in person.
Yep.
Online, reactable stuff is unreactable. So it's fundamentally different. So we used to have to go in person to have a good experience and practice things, and now we don't have to do that. So I don't blame anyone for making the call like, "Hey, I really just want to play with good people today. I just want to like sweat. I'm done with work. This is how I unwind. I want to like focus on this game and get better."
Yeah.
So I'm not going to blame them for going online to try to play like really good players in the Celestial floor and Strive instead of go spend $10 to go to a venue fee, uh,
Yeah.
$10 venue fee just to like play with the same person they play every week. I don't blame them for that. But there's another unique problem with playing at locals now that I don't know if this is the same in any game that you guys are playing, but in anime games, there's an issue where the input delay between different versions of the game is drastically different. I think this happened with DNF. I've already blocked that game out of my memory because I just do not like it. I liked it for a little while, and then I realized the game is designed like for me. It just make the design choices make no sense. So I already like forgot all about it. But I think there was an issue with the input delay between PC and PS4.
Yep.
Mm.
Strive has a huge problem with this, and it's really exaggerated in Strive because originally all the console versions had more input delay than PC. So PS4, PS4 Pro, and PS5. PS5 was actually the worst, if I remember correctly. Then they patched the game and they removed a bunch of input delay from the PS4 Pro and the PS5. And so it's pretty much in line with PC. They're all great. Then
Oh,
you
good.
go into most locals, most tournaments actually, even majors, and they're still on base PS4 because no one's going to buy PS4 Pros anymore. Because
Yeah.
why would you buy that when the PS5 is out? Because that's basically a PS4 Pro. You know, I'm not going to
Yeah.
buy both. I'm just going to buy one. Let's buy a PS5. Those are out now. But PS5s are also so
Hard to get.
still so sought after that no one's going to bring those to a local. Like if that got stolen or broken or anything, and they're a weird shape, so they're hard to
Yep, they
like
are.
travel with. They don't
Yeah.
fit into bags. They're not square. Like I need
Yeah.
you need to put a stand on it, like a round stand for some reason, to have it stand up. You know, and you
Yeah.
have to put it on. Like it just there's no good way to move those things around. You don't want to bring them with you, so
To go a
you
little
suck
meta
it
real
up.
quick here is that I've seen you jump between the player and the TO like rapidly during this conversation. We're like, as a
It's
player,
bad for everybody. It sucks.
Yeah.
So the player also it's both because it locally is most locals are probably going to have people have to bring their setups. That's how it always was for
Yeah.
us. We didn't have enough setups, and before we had the gaming zone where we had tournaments for a long time in Arizona where they had their own setups, all base PS4s by the way. We would bring
Mhm.
our setups with. Now people are bringing PCs with because it's easier to bring a whole desktop, like we're having a LAN party in the year
Yep.
2022, rather than bring a PS5.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Strive, the input delay is so different between base PS4 and everything else. It's
Mhm.
literally 2 frames or more difference between all of them. So, really important mechanic in Strive is instant blocking. It is in my opinion, you know, not everyone's going to agree with me. In my opinion, if you could instant block consistently, it is as impactful or almost as impactful as like parry in Third Strike. It is like game changing what you can do. You cannot interact with Ramlethal if you can't instant block her. If you can instant block Ramlethal consistently, you can like she takes on so much extra risk while she's trying to like frame trap you with Rekkas and stuff because you can throw between the frame traps. There's like not a big enough gap, but if you instant block, she doesn't get pushed far back. So throws are 2 frames, you can throw her out of it. But the instant block window is only 2 frames. 2 frames is the same amount of time difference between the different versions of the game. So if you've learned to instant block on one, you can't do it on the other, or it's really hard to adjust.
Right.
So playing base PS4 Strive when you've been playing on, you know, a PS5 or a PC it's really hard to do something as important as that. The game feels different, and a really important mechanic in the game is like almost locked out for you because you really do need to practice that really hard. It's such a tight window. It's the first time instant blocking hasn't been like an 8-frame window in an Arc Sys game in forever, and it's 2 frames. It was 3 in the beta, and they're like, no, it's too good. Make it 2. Um,
Yeah.
so it's just a completely different game, and it's like another reason why people don't like. I almost don't want to play the game in person because I don't want to play on a PS4. And we had a venue that it was like a esports arena at a Walmart in Scottsdale
Mhm.
where
Mhm.
it was all on PC, which was awesome. Um, but you know that unfortunately is not running on Wednesdays anymore, and we don't have Strive tournaments going on there. So if I want to play Strive in person, I'm probably playing it on a PS4, and it just I don't wanna
That's
do
yeah.
it.
Yeah, no,
I really don't wanna do it.
yeah, I hear you because like I'm not playing any fighting games consistently right now. John has been, and like from talking to him, like that's been a dilemma that he's run into because it's like with Street Fighter Five and like the high refresh monitors, the input lag. There's all this talk about like the tech with like Arturo and stuff, like finding new ways to reduce input lag. And like I've seen it in our little group chat. Like he's just like, man, I don't know if I want to go to TGZ and play on PS4 now. And it's just like
Yeah.
that's a natural that's a perfectly good example and a good reason to not want to go. Like, like you said, like the offline experience is there, but it's like the game experience is inferior. And it's like at the same time, like it's hard as a venue operator to want to invest in that. Cause like you said, it's like, TGZ is running base PS4s. So it's just like I don't blame them for not wanting to invest in PS5s at this time when, with the pandemic and the lounge not being, as popular as it's been for like the fighting games that are going to use that. Right now I think their biggest thing is like Smash tournaments. And so for me, like putting my TO hat on, like looking forward to like Street Fighter 6, I'm kind of like, well, I don't see TGZ investing in PCs. Like, I just think that that's out of, out of the realm of possibility. Like, that's not going to happen at all. So for me, like, I've started to think and look at those places like Esports Arena or some of these other like PC gaming places, and it's just like, could this be a possible place to host tournaments where people are going to be happy with like the experience that they get offline? Because it's like, yeah, you don't want to provide an experience, and I mean, I guess we could try to do LAN parties and be like, hey, can you guys bring your PCs here? Run out of space or something, go back to UAT and be like, hey, everybody bring a PC and a high refresh monitor and we'll do it over here.
Yeah,
So
the
yeah,
high
like
refresh
I
monitor
understand
is the
completely,
latest
man.
thing for sure. I
Just the whole, I guess, like the options available for playing games is so much different now. There's like a game's on like 4 consoles now. It's on like, if you want to argue that way, it's gonna be on like, Xbox One, PS4, PS5, and PC.
Yep.
Like,
Yeah.
or maybe even Nintendo Switch. It's like back in the day, you just had to choose like the whole community to be like, all right, we're gonna play Persona on the PS3, and no one bought it on Xbox, and that was it. That was how
Yeah.
it went. And now, you can't say that because we're also getting crossplay in a lot of games now, which is, not a welcome addition for a lot of people. But it's just stuff is just on too many things, and they're not all the same. I really wish developers would make a serious effort to like
Yeah.
make
Then again,
the experience more uniform. But I
yeah.
get that, they want to make a game for next gen consoles and PC, but they're not, there's not enough people that have adopted those consoles yet. So they have to make it, for both. It's like every PS5 game is also a PS4 game, right? It's like the same
Hmm.
kind of thing.
yeah,
Um, so I mean, it just is what it is, and people aren't going to upgrade to PS5s for, offline yet.
I think a big thing too is to put on the developer hat of all hats now. Like, you know, if you're making the game and you're trying to make it by a certain date and you have to make it for all these different platforms, you're ultimately just kind of offloading it onto your testers and and certifying it across the different platforms. But you know the community that's actually going to be impacted by an extra 3 or 4 frames of lag per version, um, very very small as far as your
Yeah,
install base goes.
we're not a major part of the player base. When you really
Yeah.
think about like who's buying these games, like the people that are willing to go play at a tournament offline is like a fraction of a percent.
Right.
We're not of the millions of copies of like like a Mortal Kombat game or Dragon Ball or something. Like
Mhm.
Mortal Kombat, the last one was the biggest selling like retail game of the year it came out in, to my knowledge. It was like it
Yep.
set whatever record that year.
Yep.
And we're most people buying it are like buying it for the story to beat up their friends online one time, or just because it's cool they got it for Christmas or something. And we're just an afterthought. Not that we don't matter, we matter, but it's like, why would they spend, I don't know. I don't know what it's going to cost, how much time or effort, in order to make the PS4 version the same. Or maybe they can't. Maybe it's like a hardware limitation. So, like, what do they make the other ones, more input delay just to like even it out, or or do they just say, all right, well, forget the PS4, whatever, it's good enough, we'll move on. And if people care enough, they'll bring PS5s.
Yeah, I
I
mean,
don't know.
Munchie in the chat here brought up the issue of being Unreal Engine as well, where a lot of the modern fighting games that are notorious for input delay, such as Tekken or Strive or Street Fighter Five, they were built in the Unreal Engine, and so Capcom, in my case for Street Fighter Five, like Capcom like couldn't fix it. They had to go to Unreal to actually do it, and Unreal had to release a new version of the engine to lower the input latency. And so all of that costs money. Like that engagement, like the effort that the Epic Games has to do costs money, and then they're doing it at the behest of Capcom, and it's a Japanese and an American company, and like all this stuff. And so
Mhm.
all for, again, a very small vocal minority. You could even say that about online. For a while, like nobody gave a shit about rollback because the people that were impacted by it, like we were very small. Like, if you look at Super Smash Brothers, like again, it's actually a kind of a funny coincidence that we talked about how TGZ's Super Smash Brothers tournaments are still doing well, and that
I
is
was going to bring
coincidentally
exactly this up like 10
Mhm.
minutes ago.
it's the game with the shittiest online, right?
Yeah, they have
And
to. They have to do it in person. They don't have an option.
and that thing sold 1 billion copies. So it's like, what's the reason for it? So I get it from a publisher standpoint, and it's a really where I think things are starting to change now is that the competitive community is essentially a marketing machine for these these games. And
I
so
agree.
Yeah.
when the competitive
Mhm.
community starts complaining on Twitter, complaining on streams and whatnot, that gets noticed and picked up by the developers as this is bad marketing, bad rep. We need to fix this. Um,
Yeah.
I think that's what happened with rollback in particular.
Yeah, it's not even
Yeah.
just like the competitive community. If you think about it, if you think about like just like you said, like the fighting game players nowadays, like a lot of them are streaming, right? And that's in that way, that's kind of a marketing thing too, right? Those are the people that are got the biggest eyes on them for this game. If Justin Wong is playing whatever fighting game, he's going to have a certain amount of viewers watching his game, and if he's frustrated with a certain aspect of it, that's that many people that are going to look at that and be like, oh man, well maybe I shouldn't play this, or this is a problem with this game, and like it
I
goes back to like the rollback thing and everything. Like I think I brought up what was that game, Grand Blue? Like I was
Yeah.
looking at that during like a
yeah.
Steam sale, and like I looked at the reviews, and like the majority of the reviews is, well, this doesn't have rollback. This is a great game, but I can't support it because it doesn't have rollback, and that's a huge thing.
Yeah, and it's not I don't even think it's important just for us to be able to like play it and stream it and be like a marketing tool. I think it's even more important for the people that aren't in the FGC that'll give it a try and play it online. Like you watch a video game donkey video for Strive. Like he's
Oh
got a
yeah.
huge channel with like millions of subscribers and he just has a video of him just mashing buttons with May and having a good time. And he's able to have that good time online. He's not complaining about the netcode in the video. It goes a long way when like a huge YouTuber can just pick it up and goof around and enjoy it. And that video would probably be like a scathing review if the online experience sucked. There are issues with the Strive like online experience, especially at launch, like rating update just constantly kicking you out of rematching somebody. But outside of that, he was able to play the game and give it basically, a good. I don't think he like does like a review with like a score, but clearly it's like a good testimony because he was having fun in the video.
Mm.
And that's way more people watching that than watching even like our biggest YouTubers, Maximilian, and he's huge.
Yeah,
But like, Donkey gets like millions of views on every video, and I think Maximilian gets like hundreds of thousands on most of
yeah,
his. So it's if you're trying to get people into a scene, it's almost like you got to get people out of the scene to have a good experience with it, and that's going to start with online.
yeah. Oh man. Well, I mean, oh man, it's been a good time, Ryan. I was just looking at the time. We got to cut things a little short here. John's got a little couple things he's got to do today.
Holiday rush.
Um, yeah, I mean, yeah, it's Christmas time. Yeah, so was there anything that you personally wanted to promote, or what are you getting into right now? We're probably, we'd love to have you back, talk to you again. I mean, there's definitely a lot of stuff we can continue to talk about.
Personally, I don't have anything to promote because I've been kind of out of the scene for a while, just trying to finish up my degree and focus on health and stuff like that. So I'm not really playing much at the moment, not making much content. But if you want to watch my like old catalog of videos, go on to, YouTube, look up Rath FGC, and you know, um, hopefully you like something. Hopefully you learn something. But I got nothing.
I
Just
did.
wash your hands, wear a mask, take care of yourself, take
Yeah.
some vitamins, get sleep,
Yeah,
do
when I
what you
was
gotta do.
when my son was getting into Dragon Ball, like that's not really like even the game itself wasn't really my thing, but like when he was playing it, he'd be in training mode practicing stuff, and like I always tried to push him to play online because I was just like, you want to go play some people, I don't just play the AI or go practice, and like I kind of directed him to some of your videos. Just I don't know if you watched anything, but I was just like, if you want to kind of get some base knowledge or some stuff, like this is a guy to go to and check out his stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I watched the Strive videos as well to like learn how to play it, and I think that right now I think there's a lot of people that I know of, and like some of my friends are picking Strive up again because of the latest balance patch, and like it's people that don't really know much about fighting games, period, and so like I can just pull up that the RC system video that you put out and like go through that with them because even though maybe some things have changed a little bit, but ultimately the idea of a Roman cancel is still the same. The different types are still there. So yeah, definitely still relevant and check out his content. But yeah, I thanks everyone for tuning in and we'll talk to you later. See
Thank
ya.
you.